Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Solvable Mysteries podcast. My name is Yuras. As every week, I'm joined by my co host, Glenn Highcove. We're back after 1 week's hiatus. We had some technical difficulties that we couldn't really resolve, therefore, we had to skip last week. It's really unfortunate. We had actually started recording last week. We did 80% of this show and everything just kind of crashed. We couldn't get the file that we already recorded. And then we were really strapped for time. Different things were happening. I hope you guys can forgive us. But this week, we're definitely back. Really excited to talk about the same case that we intended to talk about last week. And, I'm going to hand it over to Glenn Highcove. How are you feeling, man?
Hey, doing okay. Definitely excited to return to this topic, take another swing at it. Like you said, we had gotten 80% through, and it was a little heartbreaking for us to lose it. But on the other hand, I think us taking a second try at it is actually going to improve it because I know I wish I'd done a little better. Um, when we did it the last time. So I'm really looking forward to going over the case. I think it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And today we're going to be talking about the Susan Swedell case. So I want to really quickly build a profile of Susan Swedell, the missing woman who has been missing since January of 1988. So we're going a little bit back for this case. Susan, at the time of her disappearance, she was 19 years of age. She was 5'4" and she weighed around 100 pounds. She had sandy brown hair and hazel eyes. Also had extensive dental work, and both of her ears were pierced. Her parents were divorced, so at the time of her disappearance, Susan was living with her mother Kathy Swedell alongside with her younger sister Christine Swedell. I'm sorry, I think Christine was 16 while Susan was 19. Susan also worked part time at a not necessarily local Kmart. She worked at a Kmart in a nearby town. Now, Susan actually lived in the little town called Lake Elmo, but she did work in a town called Oak Park Heights. By the way, this is all happening in Minnesota. And basically, at the time when she disappeared, she had two jobs, not one. So one of them was at that local Kmart that I've mentioned earlier. The other one was in the same mall because the Kmart was located in a bigger mall. So in that mall there were two shops that she worked at. One was Kmart, the other was a store called Body and Soul. I'm not really familiar with that one. Both of these stores were located at St. Croix Mall in Oak Park Heights. Now, she was described by her friends and family as fun to be around. She also had enrolled at the University of Wisconsin at River Falls to study psychology, but she had been unhappy there and she actually decided to drop out because she wasn't ready to live away from her mother and sister. So then she moved back into her mom's house and she started having those two jobs, was just trying to figure out what's next for her. Now, she was a very active Christ Lutheran and she attended like the choir. I'm not sure.
Choir.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
sorry. The choir. Also, she was nervous about driving in storms. And I know this is a very peculiar little detail about her personal profile, but it's gonna play a big role here, as well as being extremely nearsighted. The quote that I've heard is that she's almost blind without her glasses, and this is going to be very important as well because she will be leaving those glasses at a time when she probably shouldn't. So I really want to jump into the timeline, but before I do, I want to throw it back to you, man. Regarding the profile of Suzanne Swedell, have I left something out? Do you have something to add upon that?
No, that sounds like a good summary of what I think of what her life was like at that point.
Yeah. Okay, so everything started on January 19th, 1988. Susan Swedell was in a hurry to leave work when her shift at the local Kmart was over. On the evening of January 19th, 1988, Susan had made plans to see her ex boyfriend on the night. However, there was a blizzard happening, and therefore the boyfriend had called and cancelled due to the weather. Um, so this boyfriend that I'm talking about, I don't think we even have the name. We only heard, like on my research, I only heard him being referred to as the ex-boyfriend, who was on and off type of a boyfriend. I think they were kind of splitting up and getting back together on a regular basis. I think since Susan was 19, I would imagine the ex-boyfriend being of similar age, which is, wouldn't you agree, man, kind of a regular thing for teenagers to be like on and off a lot, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, especially at that age, if it's one of your first relationships, um, like any little thing can kind of test your patience, right? And then make everybody kind of take their ball and go home, so to speak.
That's, yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. Now, Susan had called her mom from work while she was still working on January 19th, and she called at 4 p.m. in the evening, or I should say in the afternoon, and she told her mother, Kathy, that she would go straight after work home, but she won't, but we will get into it. Now, she finishes work 5 hours after this call, so she finishes work at 9 p.m., and at that point, the blizzard had fully moved into the area. And for everyone who's watching this on the YouTube channel, just really want to quickly set the stage where everything is located on the map. So, as I've said, this is the Lake Elmo area right here. This is the little town, or maybe a neighborhood that Suzanne was living at with her family. And then this is Oak Park Heights, a more, I would say, industrial city, it seems like. And this is the St. Croix Mall, where both of Susan's employments were located at. So she leaves her work at St. Croix Mall at 9 p.m. in the evening. And at that point, like, a blizzard had already moved in, because let's remember, this is Minnesota and it's January. So it's definitely snowy. It's definitely pretty chilly and cold. So now at this point, from what we know, she had planned to spend the night making popcorn and watching movies with her mother and her younger sister. However, as she was leaving, or I would say getting ready to leave the Kmart, she did something very peculiar that her supervisor and co-workers thought that was a little bit odd and unusual. She actually changed out of the red pantsuit she had been wearing into a sweater and a short mini skirt. Now, this red pantsuit, will play a big role. I think it's going to be a very crucial detail in this case. I'm actually pretty happy that we're redoing this case, because now I think I can frame it up a little better. And I want to ask you a question, man. So, okay, so for the audience who are not aware of this case, let's just build the scene right here. Susan is in her job, like she's working in a red pantsuit. Now, the pantsuit is not something that Kmart required you to wear. It was something Susan was wearing to work, just because she just wanted to wear that. Now, the question that I have for you, man, is, I think, and this is like a gray area in this case, and this red pantsuit is gonna be a really crucial detail. I think the most crucial in this case, to be honest. And now, when she leaves work, um, do you know if she takes the red pantsuit with her, or does she leave it like in maybe the, I don't know, dressing room in Kmart for the employees? Like, do you know that?
That's a good question. I didn't even think about that, but it would make sense that you would have some kind of, like you said, dressing room or locker room. But I've never worked for one of those big retailers like that. Just didn't have the opportunity. But I know that like I guess at similar places I've seen, sort of back offices and employee areas and things like that. I'm not sure. It would make sense. Well, here's the thing. I feel like she wouldn't, if she had worked in it that day, because wouldn't you want to wash it if you were working, even if you're just working part time in it? I feel like, I don't know if she's anything like my wife is, and us guys, sometimes we don't mind being kind of stinky, and we're not always good about details. But I feel like a lot of women are pretty sensitive to like smelling bad and clothing smelling bad. Not always. I mean, I've seen women coworkers do the complete opposite, but that was, kind of not, that was the rare exception.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that you think that she did take the pantsuit with her when she left Kmart, right? Like that's where you.
Yeah, that was the impression I got from the research, was that she had changed, and I never heard anything about her leaving anything behind. Like, I always assumed that,
Yeah.
yeah, she'd taken it with her.
Yeah, that's the assumption I had as well. So Susan made her way through the snowy parking lot, and she actually brushed the snow off of her 1975 Oldsmobile Cutlass. That is the vehicle that she was driving now. She pulled out of the parking lot and she headed down Stillwater Boulevard in the direction of Lake Elmo. So, real quickly on the map, this is the St. Croix Mall that she was working at. She leaves, she drives, I would assume, in this direction, and now this is still Stillwater Boulevard. This road right here, that it will lead to her first stop. Now, the first stop will not be Lake Elmo. The first stop will be a gas station right next to Lake Elmo, and some really strange things will happen there. So moving further into the timeline now, after driving for a few miles on Stillwater Boulevard, she noticed that her Cutlass, Oldsmobile Cutlass, was overheating and smoke was actually blowing out from under its hood. And then she pulled into the gas station, which was 1 mile away from her home in Lake Elmo. Now, on the map, I don't really have the location of her house, but I do have the location of the exact gas station that she pulled in. And my first question for you, man, is why did she pull into the gas station? Like, given the information that you and I already know about what's gonna happen next in this case, do you think that the reason for her stopping at this gas station 1 mile away from her home was the fact that it was overheating, or was it for some different reason? And why I say this is because A, it's only 1 mile away from her home, and then B, later on, when her car, now after she disappears and all of that, her car was actually at her mom's house, and then the mom actually took it for a spin. So I'm thinking, and took it for a spin. It started breaking down eventually, etc., etc. But initially, it wasn't breaking down. So I don't know, dude. I kind of found it suspicious. Like, what do you think is the reason for pulling into this gas station, in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to err on the side of, well, I don't know if it's the error, but I'm going to go to the side of like, there's some stuff that happens with your car, and by the way, it's unfortunately, it's a little bit like people's knowledge about this is not so great. So there's some things, I think, specifically, like if your oil pump goes out, um, that's something you need to pull over for, like literally right away. Right away, turn off your engine, don't restart it until you can kind of find out, what's going on, and probably get it towed. Because are you familiar with this? That if your oil pump goes out, you can actually like ruin your entire engine.
Oh
So
yes.
you can, yeah, yeah, and what's crazy is a lot of times people mistake the other lights for that. So like there's the check engine light, and there's like a temperature light. And I mean, look, I mean, I know a thing or two about cars. I'm for sure not an expert, but I know, enough about that. And um the other stuff, of course, is not nearly so serious, right? Like check engine lights, like usually nothing. It's like a time thing. And there's, the radiator thing. I mean, that's important. You don't want your car to overheat. I mean, I've had cars shut down on me because they overheated, because of kind of similar issues, not exactly what's going on here. Um, so I do wonder if just her lack of knowledge, because maybe she wasn't a car expert. They didn't have YouTube channels like Scotty Kilmer's channel to tell you how things worked. She may have sort of erred on the side of caution, and then after she talked to maybe either one of the next two people she's going to talk to next, maybe they're like, well, good news, your car is probably not ruined. We just need to find out what's going on with this one issue. I'll just add as a side note, um, like the opposite happened for my wife with our car. We had a Toyota Camry, and that light went off, and unfortunately, my wife couldn't get over in time, and we basically had to have the engine rebuilt because like crap had already like deteriorated and gone through the engine. The engine didn't seize up, like a
Yeah.
melted piece of metal,
Mm.
but it was enough that like unfortunately, it was the wrong air light, and it wasn't her fault. It was literally like she couldn't stop in the middle of the road. She had to get into a parking lot, and that was enough to like pollute the rest of the engine. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
the one thing I want to add to this is that Suzanne did notice that there was actually smoke coming out of under its hood. Now
Oh yeah.
that's a big visual indicator that now I'm not really that well versed in how cars work and all of that. So if I see smoke coming out of the hood, like I'm also pulling up. Maybe it wasn't that suspicious at all, to be honest. Now, Susan pulls into this parking lot of the gas station, and now almost immediately after that, another park pulls right next to her Oldsmobile and stops alongside of her. Now, Susan spoke to the man for a few minutes, then got out of her car and went inside the gas station. So, what's happening here, I would assume the man who was driving the car that parked right next to Suzanne's car that had just been overheating, just a few moments ago. Now, this man probably steps out of his vehicle, moves in closer to Suzanne. Now, Suzanne is still in her Oldsmobile, and he kind of says something to her. Now, afterwards, Suzanne goes inside of the gas station, and now when she's inside of the gas station, I'm not really certain if she's with this strange man that had just pulled up alongside of her. We don't really have that information from the research that at least I've seen, but now she does speak to the attendant of the gas station that will be questioned the following day regarding the disappearance of Susan. And now Susan asks this gas station attendant if it would be okay if she left her car in the parking lot overnight. Now the attendant said, "Yep, you can definitely leave it here, but you have to move it a little bit to the side." So she actually goes out of the gas station, and now the attendant at that point is like looking through the mirror, I would assume, or like through the window. I'm sorry, and then the attendant saw Susan move her car to the side a little bit, but then she does something very critical. She gets into the car of the unidentified man, and then the car at that point, that was driven by the unidentified man. Now in the car, there's the man and there's Susan, and they both leave the gas station and they head west on Highway 5, which was not, I would assume, in the direction of Susan's home in Lake Elmo. Now, Susan at that point goes MIA, and when she doesn't arrive home by 11 p.m., because let's remember, she only worked maybe like what, a good 5 miles away from her home, so it shouldn't take her 2 hours to get back home because she left at 9 p.m. So at 11 p.m., she's still not home. And, her little sister and her mother, they're worried. And now Kathy, her mother, calls the cops. And she asks the police when she calls 911 whether or not they could go out and look for her vehicle, because initially the biggest worry was, given the fact a massive blizzard is outside, that maybe she like drove into a ditch, or something really terrible might have happened to her. Now, it didn't take long for the deputy of the police station to locate Susan's car in the K station. I think it's Circle K. I don't know if they had Circle Ks back in the day or whatever. Now, at that point, when the deputy locates the vehicle, it's like very late. I think it's somewhere around midnight. So the gas station isn't operational anymore. So the same attendant that will be questioned the following day, he's not working anymore. He went back home. So the deputy just goes into the gas station and, oh, look, there's Susan's car, but no Susan. Now the deputy was immediately very scared because he assumed that Susan tried to walk home from the gas station because she only lived like 1 mile away. So the deputy actually made several drives, slow drives, throughout the route from the gas station to Susan's home in Lake Elmo. He actually drove the entire route several times, but he did not see any sign of Susan. Eventually, the deputy discounted his search, but he did alert other police units in the area to be on the lookout for Susan. At that point, the temperature had already dropped below freezing. Now, the sun came up shortly after that. The morning of, let's not get mixed up, January 20th. The morning of January 20th has pretty much, arrived, the sun came up, but there was still no sign of Susan. Deputies went back to the Circle K station and spoke with the same employee who had spoken to Susan on the previous night. Now, the attendant told them that Susan had been having some kind of a car trouble and that she had left the gas station with a man. And now he gave the description of this man, and the description of this man was that he had curly hair, shoulder length, sandy brown hair, shoulder length, was unshaven, so long hair, unshaven. He appeared to be tall and well built and was wearing a leather jacket. And we do have a sketch of this man. So this is the sketch. Dude, your take on everything, what's happening so far? What is your take on the sketch and, on the timeline that I've presented so far?
That guy's name is Chad. It's the same joke I did last time, but I can't help it.
It's
It's
just as
it is
funny. It's just as funny.
yeah. So thank you. Thank you for hearing me. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm kind of not joking though, right? I mean, that's sort of like that Chad stereotype would be this guy. I mean, it's interesting the way he's described, especially given, I guess, some of the other clues about her social life that come up because but by the way, it's worth mentioning that in the 80s, now I would say there's a kind of an obesity epidemic in the United States among other countries, and there's a lot of kind of different theories about why that is. Some of it might not be our fault, some of it might be our fault. But it's interesting that even so back then, a lot more people were like in shape, let's say, but he was described as being in good shape, right, compared to even other people in the 80s. So that
Hmm.
sounds like he was like what muscled up, right? And then by the way, it's a blizzard, right? So how does someone look like they're in good shape even under all that, let's say, in theory, heavy clothing, right?
I mean, well, given the fact that who we will suspect he is, and if he is the
Yeah.
person that we suspect that he is, then his profession kind of requires him to be in such a shape, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, so this is something I think is you can answer better than me in terms of how people dress and how they look under like clothing and snowy weather because I
Hmm.
don't I don't get as much an opportunity
Yeah.
for that here. I
Well,
mean, can you kind of tell somebody's build
um,
very well if they're wearing like a big, you know what I mean?
well, that's the thing. This is happening in '88, so the clothing was definitely different. But now I will say you have a very good point because you can't really. Well, okay, you can tell if someone is like maybe obese, but you can't really tell a skinny guy from a ripped guy if they're not you know, like really big as a person, if you know what I mean. then you can't under like really heavy clothing, you can't really tell if they're skinny or if they're like really like ripped and shredded. You know what I mean? It's really hard to tell. So maybe that's why it's why people like to live in California sometimes. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, to show it off. I mean, the one thing I was thinking
yeah.
of is because clothing was tighter, especially in the 80s. You know what I mean? People weren't wearing like baggy clothes yet. Um,
Oh, really?
like I
Okay.
was just thinking like James Caan. So James Caan, famous actor, Godfather, a lot of other movies, and he's always been in good shape, and not
Yeah.
not not like huge. He's not huge like Stallone or Schwarzenegger like in the movies in the 80s. But James Caan would have like a
Mm,
very narrow waist and broad shoulders. So if
yeah.
you look at James Caan, you can tell he can kind of kick some ass, but that he's in good shape and he's like in athletic shape. So I wonder
But
if this
dude,
guy,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but dude, let's remember one very important visual asset here that we have of the guy wearing a leather jacket. So not
Oh
wearing a
yeah.
massive coat, wearing a leather jacket. And I know that for our audience, maybe this is weird how we're stopping here, but no, guys, this is gonna be very important because we need to pinpoint who exactly is this man, and we will have at least a few, I would say, suggestions. Well, okay, at least one for sure, and we really need to figure out if this guy meets the description of the other guy. But now let's get into back into the timeline really quickly. I'm almost done, and we can discuss everything that I've just entailed pretty much. So Susan had this now, as the gas station attendant is being interviewed later on, a sketch of the man seen driving away with Susan on the night of January 19th, 1988 was composed. But now the gas attendant also told the police officers that were interviewing him that Susan had spoken with this unidentified man for a few minutes before getting into his car, and the gas station attendant assumed that both Suzanne and this unidentified man knew each other. This was not the first time they met. Like the mannerisms of how they interacted with each other kind of indicated that they were already like familiar with one another. So this is why I asked immediately, what was the reason for Susan pulling into the gas station, because it kind of now seems very strange how this guy just shows up out of nowhere just in time to save the day. It's like, was that really maybe this was the whole point? Because let's remember, Suzanne, she kind of did something strange back in Kmart. She got like dressed, like really dressed up nicely, had like some sort of a mini skirt or something like that. So maybe this was not such an accident. Maybe the plan was to meet up at the gas station with this guy. Who knows, right? Now the interesting part, when police officers looked into Suzanne's vehicle that was left in the gas station parking lot, now they found something strange. They found Suzanne's purse, her wallet, her identification, and her eyeglasses. Remember the eyeglasses that, she's virtually almost like blind without them. So, dude, without stopping here for too long, what do you make of the things that were found in Suzanne's car? Because at least the purse, at least, well, everything, honestly, purse, wallet, identification, and eyeglasses that you're almost blind without them are all the things that I would have taken if I was Susan. Why are these items in her car?
Yeah, that part was maybe the most mystifying, other than, obviously what happens in the rest of this case, the reason why this is our case today. What's okay, so the eyeglass thing, one of the things that was kind of evident was if you look at her like yearbook pictures or all the pictures we have of her, she's never wearing her glasses. So we said, okay, maybe that's maybe that's like something that she does because she's self-conscious about how she looks in the glasses. She thinks she looks prettier without them. So if this was like an expected social interaction with somebody she was trying to impress, and like per your comment about the leather jacket, by the way, leather jacket doesn't sound really practical in a snowstorm. You're not supposed to get leather wet usually. So maybe two people were dressed for a date or something, some kind
Yes.
of encounter.
Yes.
Let's call it a date, just to be charitable. Um, okay, but then the purse thing, that drives me a little crazy. So the purse thing, well, I'm sorry, what was the third thing besides the
Wallet,
purse?
wallet, and
Well,
identification as well.
okay, yeah. So everything's in the, like
Hmm.
that part drives me crazy because that doesn't make any sense to me why you would leave that in the car. Now, maybe I'm more paranoid because I've had my car broken into before. My sister's had her. Lots of people I know have had their vehicle broken into before, and my wallet never leaves my side. Like if I leave my house, like unless I'm in the ocean or in a pool, my wallet is like attached to me.
Yes.
So I feel like everyone else feels the same way, and per kind of other conversations we've had,
Hmm.
like wallet in the pocket for a guy. Well, the for many women, their version of that is their purse because they don't like to put things in their pockets sometimes. um and by the way, and the purse, I'm saying by the way a lot, like what's his name from Rogan's show. Yeah, the purse contains a lot of other important things like makeup, like a compact mirror. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Everyone I know who has a purse has makeup in it, and a compact mirror to look into. Like really important, a hairbrush maybe, um, lipstick, etc. Why would you not have those things for a social interaction? Like no one I know who carries a purse and uses makeup doesn't bring their makeup with them even when they're on the date. Let's
Exactly,
say.
and this is a really crucial point. Really crucial point. We stamped this out right now is the fact that, to me, it indicates that maybe the drive was supposed to be a short drive, not a long drive. Maybe like Susan, just hop in the car and let's just drive for like 10 minutes, and then I'll kind of we'll drive back to the gas station, then you'll get your stuff, and then I'll drive you back home. You know, is if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. If it was me, if I was Susan,
Of course. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
I
get
would,
it.
I would be like,
Mhm.
yeah, why would I leave my purse? I don't get it at all. And then being able to see. That's the other. I mean, that's, I don't know. It's
Maybe it's a
I get
okay. Maybe it's a spur of the moment. Hop in the car, let's just drive.
yeah.
And she's like, okay, okay, it's a maybe she parked her car kind of way into the distance. Then she walked over to this guy, and she's like, maybe she's like all fumbled and flustered or whatever, and she's like, oh, I forget it. And then he's like, don't worry about it, we'll just like drive a little bit and then we'll return back really soon. Maybe it was that type of a situation where the goal was to return back to the gas station, then grab the stuff from her car, and then get her to the house. Well, at least that's what Susan may have thought. Now, this unidentified man is prime suspect in this case, so we don't know what he was thinking. Let's just go over what happened next. I think we had some good conversations, and we'll. This is not even the craziest point. Like, the craziest point in this case is just coming up. Like, everything that we said so far is absolutely nothing to what will happen shortly. So let's dissect the rest of the timeline really quickly. Law enforcement, after looking into the car and finding all of those items, they told Susan's mother, Kathy, that Susan had likely ran off with a boyfriend and would probably return home in a few days. So law enforcement were real quick to brush this off as a potential runaway situation happening right there. Now, police remained convinced that Susan had ran away, even though her family members, and friends, they definitely thought otherwise. The law enforcement, they didn't even do a forensic examination of her Oldsmobile Cutlass left in the gas station parking lot. So, the car actually was towed or something like that. Well, somehow the car got retrieved to Lake Elmo home where, Susan had lived. And the car remained in front of the Swedell household for for 5 days, it says here, in the cold. Now, Kathy, Susan's mother, she worried that the car's certain parts, or like the engine, might die a little bit in the cold snow. So she thought it was a good idea just to drive around, just to warm up the car, not have it sitting in the snow all the time. So she actually drove to a store or something like that. But now, the after driving a few miles, the car started overheating, just as it did on the day when Susan pulled in into the gas station. And now Kathy immediately assumed that this was the exact same problem Susan must have encountered, and this was the exact same reason why Susan pulled into the gas station. So she took the car to Lake Elmo Repairs, I believe. I also have the repair shop at the on the map for everyone who's watching this on the YouTube channel. Now, while the car was in the repairs, a mechanic made a very disturbing discovery. The car had overheated because the petcock, a small bolt that was located under the car's radiator, had been loosened. This caused all the water to drain out of the radiator, ensuring the car would overheat if it were driven for more than a couple of miles. So I want to stop at this point because I specifically remember you having a lot to say regarding this little detail on last week when our show kind of ended abruptly, if you know what I mean. So the petcock situation, dude. You want to quickly if you do, you want to quickly like elaborate on that whole situation a little bit?
Yeah, and I think last time I also had a link to the pictures of it. I mean, you've seen one, you've seen them all. It's interesting. You can actually still get a replacement petcock for that model car right now, which
Yeah.
is amazing to me. You can get it from like O'Reilly or something like that. What was really, by the way, my family. So one of our family cars was the same model car, but just the station wagon version from like a few years later,
Hmm.
and it was a real piece of crap. Like we replaced it after only a few years. Some of those General Motors cars were just terrible back then. No wonder Japanese cars took over for a lot of that market, and I remember it having problems starting and stuff. But yeah, what was interesting when I was looking at it, I was trying to think, well, like how first of all, you never really hear about this happening that much, like the petcock falling out or leaking out. I don't think I've ever had that specific issue. Usually when something goes wrong with the radiator, it's because the radiator itself starts wearing out, like it's not built well or it starts cracking, and that's why the fluid comes out. And it sounds like it was strange enough to the mechanic that checked it. Now, just to sort of play devil's advocate, I did look up and I said, well, what can make a petcock fail? Now, if you look at pictures of a petcock, um, especially the one for this model car, it's pretty well threaded. I mean, I guess it kind of depends maybe how many threads it has, but by threaded I mean it has the circles around it like a screw or a bolt, like a bolt. It's basically a big bolt.
Yeah.
It's a big bolt that acts like a drain plug, and you got to turn it around a bunch of times. It's not like something that just is easy to unturn. I think for a good reason it's made to be able to take in and out pretty, like it takes some level of effort in turning so that you don't accidentally have what happened. And it's worth thinking about that. Like it's pretty weird for a car to overheat in the blizzard. That's not usually what
Yes.
you would think would happen. It's pretty cold. So just a goes to show you how hot the engine can get, but then it also points to probably the complete absence of fluid. That what I mean, even with that level of cold,
Hmm.
um, it overheated. Now, when I did look and try to search for, well, okay, could what could make a petcock start leaking? And I'm just going to go find that actual little definition now that I had for O'Reilly. This is a quote from O'Reilly's O'Reilly is a major retailer
Hmm.
here in the states, and um, the one thing I have kind of in boldface here is that frequent use of the radiator petcock or corrosion can cause its threads to strip. When this happens, the petcock can no longer seal your radiator from coolant leaks. So, okay, frequent use would be if you were taking it in and out a lot. That obviously wouldn't be the normal scenario here. But what I did think of, and I think I asked you this last time, was if you salt the roads there in Lithuania, because some parts of the U.S., especially parts that get really cold all the time and have blizzards, it is pretty normal to salt the roads. Um,
Yeah.
and where you have salt, you have corrosion. So that was my thought was, well, okay, in theory, maybe the petcock could have developed corrosion and like they didn't check it. And the car was from 1975, so that's like a 13-year-old car at this point. If it's the original petcock, 13 years of driving over, salted roads for, you know,
Mm.
four
Yeah.
months a year, maybe that could build up. But okay, so there's a plausible reason why that could happen, but that's not what the mechanic said, right? The mechanic didn't say, "Oh, this thing's corroded. It's
Yeah.
clear. Look at that. You can stick your finger right through it." Whatever. You know what I mean? He didn't. That's not what he said. He said it looked like it had been maybe intentionally loosened because of the amount of effort.
Yeah, loosened, and the premise here is the petcock is like a little screw or something like that with like ridges, and it got loosened a little bit. And when you do that, it could make the car overheat because there won't be any fluid. But at the same time, you made a really good point that it could actually happen naturally. But let's go with the mechanic right there. Okay, so what detectives did next, they actually interviewed Susan's friends and co-workers from Kmart, and they had learned that she had recently been receiving numerous calls at work from a man she referred to as Dale. Now, Dale was someone that, we kind of suspect being the unidentified man in the gas station, as well as being a male stripper. This is why I said that maybe this is why he needs to be, like, his body needs to be in check for his profession. And now, Susan had mentioned this to her mother, that she has been speaking with some sort of a male stripper called Dale at 19. It's kind of interesting, you know what I mean? And basically, the mother was really intrigued. She was like, yo, I need to meet this person. Okay, please let's meet. I want to make sure what's happening here. And Susan was like, yep, you can definitely meet Dale. But it never really happened. Maybe there wasn't enough time or something like that. So they never ended up actually meeting. So no one really knows who exactly is this Dale. We just know that there is a dude called Dale, and he has been calling Susan at work. Now, investigators also learned that Susan had been calling telephone chat lines and talking with various males, and it was actually unknown if she ever met any of them in person. Now, as we've kind of discussed last week, telephone chat lines were apparently a system where people could call a certain number and you would kind of get immediate, like you would then be placed in like a chat group or something like that, and you could like talk with like up to like 9 or 10 people in the chat line or whatever. It's like some sort of back in the day 80s thing in America, and basically this is how you would meet a lot of people all over the United States. So Susan was calling those chat lines a lot, and it actually made sense that she, was receiving calls at her work because she was talking on chat lines. At one point, the quote was that she spent around $300 on her phone bill because of these chat lines. So she was probably meeting a lot of people on them, and they were actually calling her work telephone, not her like cell phone, because this is 88. She didn't have one, but like her work phone was actually getting bombarded on the day when she disappeared by like phone calls for Susan. That's like very vague, this very vague information, but that's all we have. I found it very strange. Now, to finish off the timeline, this is the crucial point in the case. This is literally the movie scenario situation where it makes me hard to believe that this actually even happened, okay? So, a week after Susan disappeared, her younger sister, who was 16, Christine, returned home from school one day. And they were doing that weird little tactic where they would keep their key to the home in their yard somewhere, like under a rock. Sometimes people would do it, etc., etc. It's a pretty crazy strategy, in my opinion, but they were kind of doing it in the Swedell household, and they were kind of keeping the key outside of the house on the shelf, and only the people that knew about the location of this key could go inside of the house. And the only people that knew of the location of the key was Susan, Christine, and Kathy, okay, the inhabitants of the house, no one else apparently. Now, one day, Christine, the younger sister of Susan, she's just walking back home from school, and she tries to reach for the key on the shelf where she knows that it's gonna be, and it's not there. So she kind of panics immediately, but then she kind of finds it a little bit to the side on the shelf, definitely not where she believes it was last placed. So she's already a little bit on edge, like, what's happening here? Now she unlocks the door to the house, and Christine notices that there are more dirty dishes in the sink that had been when she left, because she left the dirty dishes in the sink the last. And we kind of conversated the last time how we think it's kind of suspicious how she exactly remembered how many dishes were in the sink. But then the next thing that's really crucial here is that she smelled the smoke. There was a smell of smoke, and for some reason everyone kind of said that it smelled like marijuana, that marijuana was smoked in the house. Now, Christine, after seeing all of this weirdness in her home, she immediately called Kathy, her mother, and she actually ran to the neighbors because she kind of was super scared because she doesn't know if there's an intruder at the house or whatever. And by the way, just for reference, this is all happening 1 week after Susan disappeared. 1 week after Susan disappeared. Okay, so now Kathy goes back home from her work, and herself and Christine, they enter the house together. And apparently, besides the dirty dishes and the smell of what was likely marijuana, nothing else was out of place. But then they made a shocking discovery: the red pantsuit that I mentioned in the beginning of the show that Susan had been wearing at work the night she went missing was actually rolled up and crammed underneath Susan's bed. And now, from what we gathered, is that the pantsuit was not there before. Apparently, Susan had taken the red pantsuit with her and it was actually missing or something like that. But it's strange, how is it missing? Because if she did take it with her, then didn't they find her? Where's the pantsuit? Wouldn't they find it in the abandoned vehicle that she left in the gas station? None of this makes sense. Let me just quickly finish up the timeline, then let's dive into this, man. All of her clothing and shoes were still in her closet in her room. All of her makeup and hair products were still in her bathroom. Now, over the years, detectives continued interviewing people who knew Susan, but none of them had any information that helped locate Susan. In 2002, so 14 years after, law enforcement asked Kathy and Christine to submit a blood sample. Submit blood samples, so both of their DNA would be on the file. There was no activity noted on her social security number until 2006, when it was used by some strange woman in California who was attempting to join the United States Army. Detectives decided to take another look at Susan's case in 2018, so quite recently, and many years after she disappeared. And since then, since 2018, the case has been open. Now, law enforcement heavily believes that Susan met with foul play. They no longer assume it was a runaway situation. The law enforcement is heavily leaning that on the night of January 19th, 1988, Susan met with foul play. Something bad happened to her. And law enforcement know that most killers eventually tell someone about what they did, so they heavily at least hope that someone somehow heard of what happened to Susan, and therefore there is a $25,000 reward being offered for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Susan's disappearance and likely murder. So that's the timeline, dude. I know we have a lot to dissect here. You want to add anything to that? And I guess, go ahead and I guess move into your thoughts section.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add, aside from like kind of getting into, let's say, the actual thoughts and theories. So, just to rewind it a little bit, and this is, I think, is where right around where it crashed last time. So hopefully I
Yeah.
haven't jinxed it by saying it. But the chat line thing, I think, is worth can lead into a bigger discussion about maybe some of her psychology.
Mm,
And by the way, this is not just a little preface. This isn't blaming the victim. But it's interesting to look at. There were some aspects of her social life that weren't, I guess, while they were not uncommon, they weren't normal either, if that makes sense.
of
So,
course, of course.
it, yeah, I mean, it's so interesting now. Like you look at it, like the ability to communicate and find other people. I mean, you and me, case in point. Even though that some of this is like probably better to better to go into more detail when we do our show about the show someday. Um, but like case in point, you and I, we can talk. We're talking right now. You and I are talking to each other on the other side of the world, um, basically for free. I mean, yeah, there's some startup cost for the internet, and you could maybe pay for Skype like I do, as like a business expense. But whatever it is, like at this point in 2021, it costs us basically nothing for us to be able to talk across the world. And the fact is, you and I found each other to do this show via social media site, via Reddit. So, like, the world of 1988 was way different. So, it was much harder to meet people. Also, even like I, when I turned 18 in 1994, even back then, like this is really the internet as we know it didn't exist. There was some form of the internet with things like there wasn't even really America Online yet. There were like these other weird sign up things that you still had to use like a phone, like a modem to sign on. It's like there was just, I think it was Prodigy and stuff like that. There were BBSs, but someone like Susan is um, not going to use those. This is like computer nerd stuff back then. So I can kind of understand why she was using these chat lines, these phone lines. So like a little bit of trivia back in the old days, old days. So I'm talking about like the 40s and 50s and before that, when people had telephones, a party line was that like you might live in an apartment that shared a phone line and you could literally pick it up and talk to a bunch of people at once because you were all sharing a phone line. But that obviously went away, and then a party line became what we think of now as these pay per minute calls. So there were generally two classes of pay per minute things.
Yeah.
One was like the adult stuff, the 976 lines, which obviously this isn't that, where you would pay, like an exorbitant amount of money. So between $1 to $3 a minute for, let's say, adult entertainment. But then the other class of things were kind of what Susan was doing. So in this case, sometimes there were sports lines, like gambling and things like that, or what team to bet on, and sometimes there were things like the telephone psychic stuff, which
Oh
I
yeah,
think still exists.
yeah.
That was real big, even like in the '90s after that. But yeah, meanwhile there was also things like this, like basically a chat room that you paid for, and like $1 to $3 in the '80s dollars. Sorry to cough. Is closer to like $10 a minute now,
Yeah.
if you adjust for inflation.
Yep.
So sorry, my
So
throat
all good.
suddenly got dry enough of all times, right? Right when it's my turn to talk. Yeah, I like but yeah, so like I mean, so the thing is, she had racked up some kind of massive bill. I think when we did this before, we
300.
said it was like something. How much was it again?
300, man.
I
Three.
mean, that's
Yeah.
adjusted for inflation. That's like 900 or $1,200 now.
Yes. Yeah. Crazy. Crazy money.
I mean, that's like an apartment for a month or something in like a moderately sized city. That to me seems unusual. Now, maybe I'm just sheltered. Maybe maybe this is more common than I think. I mean, there was even a Simpsons episode on this, I think, way back in the day, where like Lisa Simpson, racked up some big line. Maybe this is something that
Mm.
I have a daughter, so maybe I should watch out for this, because my daughter definitely like interacts with their friends on like some social media stuff. Um, but so maybe to be fair, maybe like more social inclined people are more likely to fall for this. But this almost seems like a kind of addiction. Now, the whole thing with her getting calls at her work, which is entirely inappropriate. The only people that really should be calling you, even as an adult, the only people that should be calling you at work, especially at a big retail establishment like this, would be family for like emergencies. It's highly unusual in America at like a Kmart or a Target or anything like that to be getting multiple personal calls a day at your job when you're supposed to be there on like the kind of the floor, let's say the shopping area of the store. I
Of course.
mean, the only people that should be calling you could be like maybe station to station, like from a manager, or like these days maybe it wasn't as common back then because you didn't have the as much of the little walkie-talkie action in 1988 as you do in the years after that with like family radios and like business radios. But maybe you would be getting like communication over those. But yeah, like personal calls. It begs the question: was she giving these people that she was meeting her work number?
Yeah, that's actually, one of the strange things that I think she did. I think it was maybe just a casual situation. She's on the chat lines. She's kind of feeling lonely, so that's why she's spending all this money on the chat lines, because apparently she wasn't really happy at that point. So I guess that makes sense, right? Why she was on the chat lines. And when she was kind of giving out her number. And since she's at work all the time and she's lonely a lot, uh, so she's like, yo, just call me at work because I don't want to be lonely. You know what I mean?
So what? Where is this? So like this is kind of inappropriate venues for this. I mean, I guess part of it is
Yeah, but
she was.
mhm.
Well, okay, we just started to do it. Right? I mean, I guess on one hand, she's college age, right? So we know that she tried college, and it wasn't really working out for her. So she, kind of came back out of it, and but now she has like some amount of her peers
Mhm.
are now like they have more free time. Like I'll tell you, when I was in college, I usually didn't work. Maybe I'd work during summers. I did try like my first semester, um, maybe first 2 semesters of college, tried to work like part time. while I was doing college full time. I didn't really like it. It got in the way of stuff. And you know what? To be honest, I had the privilege, I guess, and the luxury of having parents that paid for everything. And maybe she didn't necessarily have that, right? So, the practical reality was she was essentially working full time, doing doing two part time jobs, right?
Yeah.
She's like cobbling together a full time living. And really, like, I mean, a great ethic, right? So in some ways maybe she felt like she was missing out, but then, to me, if I was going to be kind of like a harsh, like, kind of like mean girl. I'm not a mean girl, I'm a boy, but to me, it seems a little bit desperate. So it seems like this, and specifically, even though I'll say that, yeah, her peers are meeting people in class and in the college environment, and maybe she's not getting it's at an age where people are meeting each other, and finding boyfriends and girlfriends, etc. She's not getting that experience, and to her credit, she's not doing it at work, right? She's not dating coworkers that we know of necessarily, or she's not dating customers. So maybe that's being professional.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a sort of hole in her life. Something seems really odd to me about, like, the chat line already is a little bit like it's expensive. It seems like, well, can't you go to other social places? Well, you can't drink yet, right? She's not drinking age, so she can't go to bars. Maybe she can go to clubs, but maybe there's not really a lot of clubs in her kind of area that she's living in, and maybe it's like a little bit exorbitant to try to drive to a bigger city where there are. And maybe she's not comfortable like that. Like, I wasn't comfortable going to clubs when I was her age. Um,
Yeah.
there's something, I know I'm going long on this, but I get the feeling that, because I know it was mentioned that she was depressed, and it's some good reasons to be depressed when, like, life isn't living up to your expectations and you're working hard, and maybe college isn't working for you. But I can't help but wonder if this is sort of like a manic outgrowth of, like, where there's the low, sometimes there's also the highs. With,
Oh
especially
yeah.
with bipolar. And not saying she's bipolar, but if she was bipolar, maybe this is a little bit of manic behavior where she's meeting.
Mm.
Seems like she's meeting a lot of guys, and this isn't judging her, but it's saying it's a little bit unusual, in her specific social situation,
Yeah.
to have so many, let's say, male contacts, and to be kind of lining up so many dates.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Yeah, it was like just my quick take on the whole thing is that yeah, the chat line thing is definitely weird. The $300 just for these days money around $1,000 on a chat line indicates that it's not something sustainable, which indicates that she's doing this short term. Kind of indicates as well. I know I'm saying a lot of indicates here, but like it kind of tells me that she's not feeling good and she's trying her hardest to feel good. And when you're kind of depressed, you're gonna do something radical because you're constantly feeling bad. It never ends, and you're kind of looking for a quick, brief moment of happiness, no matter what the cost is. So maybe $1,000 a month, adjusted, for today's money, kind of seemed like a good investment for her happiness. And yeah, then she meets a lot of crazy people. She may have met this man Dale on one of those chat lines. Maybe Dale is in fact a stripper, and he lives in Minnesota, and maybe they arrange a date. So and maybe this is part of the date. The gas station is part of the date with Dale. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense how the car is breaking down right at the same point where she stops at the gas station. Like what then? How? Like what's the likelihood that her car kind of breaks down at the same exact place where she arranged to meet for a date? Because that's what it is. We have to admit it, because if the guy who pulled up next to her broken down car, if he knew that the gas station is the place where they were supposed to go on a date, then the whole line of thinking that someone purposely unscrewed the petcock kind of goes out the window, which I kind of am leaning towards that maybe it's some sort of a crazy overreaction from the maybe mom's side regarding the vehicle. Because I mean, come on, how much of a mathematician would you have to be to unloosen the screw just enough so that you would pinpoint exactly when it would start overheating? No one can do that, so I'm kind of throwing it out of the window, the whole petcock situation. But then again, we have to kind of think about the red pantsuit. What the hell is up with the red pantsuit? If she did take it with her out of her, Kmart, which makes sense because the pantsuit, just as she disappeared, is missing. So now, if she takes the pantsuit with her and it's in her vehicle, then wouldn't it make sense for her to leave it in her vehicle when she goes off on this little ride with this unidentified man? Because she left her purse, identification, wallet, eyeglasses. Would make sense that she left the pantsuit as well, because where the hell is the pantsuit in all of this? So this kind of really makes me question the legitimacy of the of the whole situation where someone snuck into the Swedell household, smoked some weed, and left some dishes. Like the legitimacy of that situation occurring kind of really is questioned on my end. I know I kind of went into all of the directions here, but yeah, dude, please continue.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I'll even tag on to your point about the petcock and the radiator. When I think about it, I feel like it would be really hard. I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe the cutlass is really high off the ground and you can just scoot under there. But like it's snowing, right? So the parking lot that it's in, whether it's at home or at work, is, it's a snowy weather. It's covered, the ground's covered with ice and snow and mud. And how do you even scoot under there to loosen that thing? Like it's at the bottom of the radiator, as I understand it. From like, even I think I even just ran into this recently
Yeah.
somewhere else. So it's at the bottom of the radiator, so that you can easily, drain out the radiator fluid. If you want to change out the fluid, you just put a pan under there and loosen it. But like usually when that's done, the car's up on jacks. Like the car's either raised up or driven up on something. Like I was looking actually at my wife's car, and I was checking for something, and I was like, well, if I were to go try to scoot under there, could I do like one of those, like, little wheel things? And I was like, oh no, I would need to jack off my wife's car or put it up on like those little roll
Yeah.
up, those drive up things. So I don't really see how somebody could do that easily. I'm not saying it's impossible. For sure somebody could try to, maybe someone who's really good at it could get under there, but I don't see how someone could do that without getting really wet and muddy and stuff and
So it's
have to
like a
actually.
so it's like a red herring. We are kind of in
Yeah, yeah.
agreement that this is unconnected, because if I had to bet on one thing that's unconnected to her disappearance out of all of these mysterious things, I would say the petcock is unconnected. I don't know. It's just
Yeah,
how I feel.
13-year-old parked car on a car that maybe wasn't well maintained
Yeah.
in a potentially corrosive environment. Um, you
Yeah.
know, with a lot of road salting going on. So
Exactly.
yeah, but it's worth us taking that verdict on that point when we break it down to the, let's say, the three different major theories. So that'll help us, I think, evaluate those. Okay, so that's one thing. Now the other thing I think that's worth looking at is, um, why did she change into a skirt? A mini skirt on when a blizzard was going on. That
Yeah.
doesn't, not only does it not seem practical, it almost seems foolish. Now, once again, we're not shaming somebody or saying something should happen to somebody because of the way they wear. She's certainly, as an adult, certainly free to dress any way that's appropriate for what she thinks she's going to do with her time outside of work. So, she changed at work because that's, she's at work, she's going to leave work. She changes, all right, it's my free time, I'm going on my way. It's not like she was naked, right? But she's dressed in a way that would be, let's say, maybe appropriate for the 100-degree day that I had here in California in Los Angeles than for, sub-freezing weather, and not only that, a blizzard. So
Um.
that's
Just to stamp on the miniskirt situation, my take is she's clearly dressing up to meet someone that she's interested in, maybe for a potential relationship type of a situation happening right there. If you know what I mean, like that's what I've got from this little detail.
I think that's the definite deductive,
Mm,
reasoning for that. So yeah, that so they I think we're both in agreement
yeah.
that there was a planned social encounter with somebody after this.
Oh yeah.
So and by the way, Mr. Chad, um,
Mm,
with the with with the leather jacket, or Dale or whatever whoever it was, with the leather jacket. I mean, also, right? Because the leather jacket's not good for, well, a leather jacket's good for riding a motorcycle. It's not good for running around in a blizzard in, if you're actually going to keep that, if you care about that jacket.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, yeah. That's I don't really have much to add to that.
So then I guess part of it is this this date or social interaction. I mean, true enough, it could be that the person was like following her to some other place, and then she has the car problem, and maybe that's the most obvious solution here, is that she has a car problem that she didn't expect, but the person was already, let's say, following her, and she knew he was like, we don't know that
Yes.
she didn't know that she was being followed,
Oh
right?
yeah. No,
There's
no.
always like
Hmm.
yeah, I mean it, and it kind of makes sense for her reaction to this person. Let's just assume, let's give us, just make a fair to her, a charitable assumption that she wouldn't just suddenly change her mind about who she was going to meet because somebody better came along. I mean, that could happen, but let's say that isn't what happened.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Let's
Yeah.
say she's not completely fickle about, oh, well, I was going to go meet, Chester, but here comes Chad and he's way better looking, and I'm just going to like get in the car with a stranger without my purse and my glasses because I'm just so overwhelmed by his um, incredible attractiveness.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, I
okay. So,
I get your point. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it does. It seems like it was planned, and yeah, to your point, I agree with you that, yeah, maybe she was just sort of swooning. Maybe the guy was really persuasive. So then what we come down to is, given everything that we know, what the heck happened to her, and why is it that the police think at this point that she's dead? Because I think, wasn't it the case that the police didn't immediately take this very seriously? Like
Yes.
they weren't like quick to jump on her being missing.
Yes, because she's 19. Um, she goes into she climbs into a car with an unidentified man, and they drive off, and that's the last thing that the law enforcement know. So they immediately think that she ran away, and she'll return in a few days. She's 19. She has the right to disappear for a few days, since she's a free person, and police kind of assumed that was the case. So you're right, they didn't really look into it immediately.
And I think, back, like I said, I'm trying to recover some of what we talked about last time, but I think there was like two different things too, that, like, just to be fair to the police, why they could have reacted this way, because one, maybe they're running into this all the time with teenagers. I'll say that I've noticed that some parents, as their children get older, and especially around this age of like independence, there's like a lot of weirdness that goes on, and like, rebelling against like the parents. And I used to see this in Boy Scouts all the time. There'd be dads that had a hard time with their kids, like with children in general, teenagers not really being like children anymore, right? Teenagers basically being young adults, and having trouble kind of adjusting to that, like the kid isn't saying yes daddy anymore. But the same thing, I'm sure the cops run into this all the time, sort of the war of the wills, and people running away, and especially when the guy's involved, it's like, well, he knows how to treat me, I'm grown up, I'm a grown man or a grown woman.
Yeah.
And then, big temper tantrums and stuff like that. So, from just everybody involved, right? So then maybe they're just, oh, that's one of these again. Maybe they're dealing with like 10 of those a week, just because it happens a lot. But then the other thing that I thought was a little more interesting in that scenario was, because of what happened. You know, we don't. I don't know that we don't unfortunately have any like indication of this or any extra research, especially because we don't have a time machine, so we don't know what the area was like long ago. We don't have someone to talk to that lives there. I mean, let's suppose that the area had some amount of prostitution.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, yeah, because like this habit, like so, I'll give an example. It doesn't have to be like a red light district or like a place that has is known for a lot of prostitutions on the street. I will say that even like
Mm.
truck stops for long-term truckers, um, lounge lizard, I mean, what are they called? Lot lizards. Lot lizards are women that oh well, it not doesn't have to be women, people people that work as in prostitution, um, for even like truck stops. So even like truck stops in the middle of nowhere have like I mean truckers get lonely too, right? So
Lot lizards.
yeah,
Oh.
that's actually that's an old, like, it's been around for a long time. But if we have any truckers that listen, um, by the way, I like a couple of trucker YouTube channels. So maybe who knows? Maybe some of them reciprocate and like our channel back. Yeah, no, that's definitely an issue. Like wherever you have like a lot of men, you're gonna tend to have like some amount of prostitution or prostitution attempts, and maybe if there's any of that going on, like they don't really want to break it to the mom. But I mean, between that and all the phone calls, I'm not saying she was, but I'm saying a profiler could look at that and say, well, okay, well, the woman's getting a lot of phone calls. Um,
Yeah.
already is working part time. Someone could make that assumption and say, oh, well, maybe though, but though I would say if that's the case, and then she disappeared, they should have taken it a lot seriously because people that work in prostitution are definitely at a much higher risk for getting killed
Yes.
or injured. So that maybe rules against it that they didn't take it so seriously, because maybe
Mm.
that would have been a good reason to take it seriously. Just given all the many serial killer cases that we've heard of people, you know, doing horrible stuff to prostitutes. But we're not saying she's a prostitute. In fact, we're saying she probably wasn't a prostitute. But that I could see that's why.
No, I just want to step in that maybe that it's a good thing to evaluate everything. Because I never, this theory never even crossed my mind, but it's a good way. It's good for us to evaluate everything because, like, it's a gas station, and she gets into a car with an unknown man. Now, I know the circumstances don't really add up. She was doing like a big shift in Kmart, and called like her mother that she's gonna be back home soon. Doesn't make any sense, but I mean the scene makes some sort of sense. But it's a good thing to evaluate. I'm certain none of us are actually leaning that way. You know what I mean?
Just the devil's advocate, yeah, just to put it out there, that might be one reason
Yeah.
to, because unfortunately, a lot of people that work on the kind of the fringes of society or marginalized don't always get taken seriously by the police.
Yeah.
So that's the case not just for a lot of different people, and even children don't get it taken seriously for whatever their issue is. So yeah, I mean, we've said multiple times
Yeah.
police have messed up things and we've kind of taken them to task for it. Okay, so getting into theories, planned disappearance. Well, the only evidence we have for planned disappearance, other than she's not here, and nobody knows what happened to her, is that someone came back. The when they that kind of story, the anecdote that someone came home and like the spare key is missing, and the house smelled like weed, and there were extra. They think there were extra dirty dishes, and there's this balled up pantsuit, which like we're not even sure that she didn't have more than one pantsuit, right? It seems really really odd. I think I made the point that that part reminded me of Andrew Gosden, except Andrew Gosden actually put his pants in the laundry, maybe to make it look like everything was normal.
Yeah.
um, yeah, put his little uniform in the laundry, maybe to cover his tracks, to make it look like he had come home and was doing his normal thing. That was Dr. Grande, by the way, covered that recently, and that was his conclusion that Andrew Gosden probably did that to kind of buy himself more time in that case. Okay, but
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah, yeah, it was
because my take on Andrew Gosden's case was that he did it as something that he was doing every day, and his intentions were to return home from London, and he was just like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and that whole case, that was interesting to hear Grande's take on that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was weird with that. This thing, it was like, yeah, I mean, maybe she only had that one outfit. Now, it just seemed weird. Why would you risk getting found again if this was a planned disappearance, but come back into the house, but not really take anything else, right? Like leave dirty laundry and like smoke weed in the house, and it is nothing about that relationship, even if that was like a sign of contempt or like I showed you. Well, we don't have any evidence that there was any kind of strife in the house to that effect, or that would have been
Yeah.
anyone's intention, nor would that have been even.
But yeah,
Yeah.
really quickly regarding the planned disappearance, because we're in the theories now and we're discussing the first one, which is, that she intentionally disappears. I mean, yeah, the only thing I have here is the pantsuit. I have one question, dude. She's working at Kmart with a red pantsuit.
Yeah.
She
Well,
then takes off the red pantsuit, gets into a sweater and a miniskirt, then she goes somewhere. Now the pantsuit is reported missing. So where is the pantsuit? Is it at Kmart or is it at her vehicle? If it's at her vehicle, then she must have taken the pantsuit with her as she but left her stuff in the car as she got into the car with
oh
Chad. So
yeah.
it's like, where's the pantsuit? Like, is it missing in Kmart? Did she bring it with her? Because the pantsuit is the most like the location of the pantsuit while she's still in Kmart is the most crucial point in this case. The most crucial, like, little information that we could have if we would like just ask for one thing that would tell us some more info. It would be the location of the red pantsuit as she left Kmart. If she brought it with herself in her car, that would mean that she took this pantsuit of all things with her as she's going on this joyride with the Chad, which doesn't make any sense, and I will say that's not realistic. I don't see that happening. So this only leaves the pantsuit missing at Kmart, or does she throw the pantsuit out while she's parked in the gas station? Maybe she throws the pantsuit somewhere out to the side. Like, where the hell is this pantsuit, and why does it appear under her bed a week later? What's happening here, man?
Yeah, that's excellent work. I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Why wouldn't she bring her dirty, of all things, dirty, sweaty clothes that have been already used on the date and nothing else, and then for that to end up in the house, rather than what seems more plausible, that the clothes were in the car and at some point somebody, maybe the mother or the sister, transferred them to the house, and they just forgot that they did that, or felt bad that
Ooh,
they had
that's a
interfered.
yes.
Yeah, but
That's
but
mhm.
here's the well, to me, the weirdest thing about it's a red pantsuit, right?
Yes.
Red pantsuit. Red is not Kmart's color. I don't know why the f she was wearing, a red pantsuit to Kmart. I looked it up while we were talking. I looked up what was the dress uniform, and there wasn't really a set dress uniform. But the answers I see on this site on Indeed was that blue Kmart's blue. This blue is their color. Blue Kmart shirt or navy blue with black pants and shoes. It was a flexible dress code, but it was generally some kind of blue shirt or white shirt with some kind of blue vest, or always black pants and your name badge.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of rebel she was that she was wearing red at Kmart. Because red is Target, by the
Yeah.
way. Here,
Yeah.
that's whenever people wear red. I've like worn a red shirt by accident to Target before, and like you have people trying to ask you stuff, and you're like, oh wait, I don't work here. Um, that's
Yeah.
that's 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 a Reddit subreddit, by the way. I don't work here. Um, yeah. So all right. So I think we've pretty much dispelled that planned disappearance theory. I would say, okay, so that leaves us with two others, and I'm actually,
No, wait, really
yeah.
quickly, really
Oh yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
The planned disappearance, have we really dispelled it? I mean,
Um,
wait, dude, going back to
yeah,
it,
yeah. No, that's a good point.
uh, I'm not sure if we dispelled it because if, like, let's analyze this. She's depressed, She's not really happy with her previous relationships. She dropped out of university recently. She works two jobs and is calling with like a million people on Chatlines, and her deciding to dodge her family, even if it's maybe for a week or so, and then with the intentions of getting back home. Maybe while she dodged her family, she does 1 week later go back home, drop the red pantsuit, eat something, but she's like, I'm not ready to get back into this life. And then she goes off to be on the run for maybe another 2 weeks or something like that, with whichever amount of time that she had decided to leave. I mean, it's not completely out of the question for me. Maybe down the line she dies, someone like murders her, or some sort of an accident happens, or maybe she's still on the run to this day, which is really unlikely in my opinion. But just the initial planned disappearance isn't so unlikely. $300 on Chatlines kind of indicates a non-long-term sustainable activity, which could culminate in her completely running away, at least just for a week initially, with no intentions to leave for good. But something happens down the line. So I'm not gonna say that I'm not completely with planned disappearance. Now, I don't. If I had to bet, I would bet on a more sinister outcome, but I will not say that it's completely impossible, given her behavior before her disappearance, that she did, in fact, purposely disappeared, even if it's for a little bit.
I mean, it's a good point. I part of me is like, when I look at it, I'm like, well, somebody that was, other than the chat lines, pretty responsible. I mean, working two jobs. I mean, unless
Yeah,
she
yeah,
was working those two jobs to save up for the big getaway. Um,
yeah,
just the fact that, yeah, I don't know. You're right. It doesn't. It does. It's not case closed on that for sure. So maybe I'll stick a little pin on that,
yeah.
because the next two theories.
Hmm.
So we have, okay. So I mean, this is kind of simple binary from there. If you don't buy planned disappearance, at least not for the long term explanation, then the binary is either like, well, somebody did something to her, like abduction or maybe murder, or the other thing would be, no person did something to her, something happened. So that would be, so it's either intentional or accidental. That's
Yeah,
kind of the binary, the two sides of the coin. So intentional, I mean, this seems to be the way that the cops are leaning, that whether or not the petcock, whether or not the car was sabotaged, she was last seen getting into a car with kind of a big, strong, well built, but kind of, I mean, the guy wasn't wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase and well shaven, right? He
oh
kind of
yeah,
looked like,
oh yeah,
he could be a criminal, right? I mean, he looked like a tough guy that could probably kill somebody with his bare hands. He looked like a little bit of a rebel. um and Susan's not here anymore, so, like, it's been a long time. So from their point of view, there was another person involved. They didn't turn up any, to their knowledge, there's not a dead person in a vehicle somewhere or an accident, right? I mean, she didn't, turn out, oh, she was T-boned in an intersection,
yeah.
and that's what happened, or, she wandered off into the snow and they found her body later.
Hmm.
No, like they don't have a body. The last time she was seen was with another human being, and she never came back for any of her valuables or her glass, even like the glasses thing. Like, you would think if you ran away, you would at
Hmm.
least take your glasses, right?
Yeah.
Or, a pair of pants. I mean, that seems to be my thought. So that's one conclusion. I mean, what do you think? Are the cops in the right track with that?
Yeah, I think if I had to bet, I would definitely lean towards the same, that, she was in fact murdered or accident, which, but I'm leaning towards murder, more so, just because she doesn't seem like the type of person who would, if she would run away, she would run away for entirety of her life. There was no activity on her social security numbers, etc., etc. So, I mean, where is she? There's no indications that she is even on this earth anymore. And then I think lastly, She was last seen driving with an unidentified man, leaving her belongings in the car, the type of belongings that she would need for a longer time, like a longer planned runaway, even if it's a week. You're definitely gonna take your glasses that you're virtually blind without, you're gonna take your wallet, you're gonna take your purse as well as your identification, as well as we forgot to mention at Kmart she had a big, well, I'm not sure how big, but there was a paycheck waiting for her. Okay, so she was about to get her next paycheck and she disappears right before the paycheck. So the whole working two jobs to save up doesn't also add up because she was waiting for the paycheck. So that's all I'm gonna say is that, yep, I do believe that given all of these things, police is on the right track. I personally believe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. But I feel like I do want to. I think if you look at the map, you see where I'm going with this. Um,
Oh yeah.
accidental. And what is there? Right, big old body of water. I mean, there's that one there, and then what's that big river right over there to to the other way to the east? What's that big old? What is that thing there?
I have no idea. Wisconsin. Let's just see what it's gonna say. It's actually St. Croix River.
Yeah, look at that thing. It's giant. Okay, so whenever I see a body of water and somebody disappears,
Oh yeah.
I like to go this direction because, and I'll tell you why. Because as I mentioned in other shows, even though California doesn't have a lot of big rivers, there's a river way north and east of me. My Boy Scout camp was actually one of my Boy Scout camps was near it, up in the Sierras. It's called the Kern River, and I have a Google News alert I have set for the Kern River, and no joke, man. Every year I see these things where somebody will have been driving by this river because this river is a big river, goes along some roads, and somebody will have disappeared. Someone will have disappeared in their car, and sometimes the same year, sometimes years later, depending on what's going on with like California drought and the water level. Like sometimes, like no joke, same year, like 4 months later, summer comes, the river goes down, and they're like, oh, there's that person that disappeared in their car back during the winter. Like they drove off the road. Nobody had any idea. No sign, no skid marks, no like, bumper got left by the, broke off in a rock or something. Like they just drove right into that river. So here was my theory. My theory was, what if everything was on the up and up? Did everything happen like how it looked like it was going to happen? She had this very active social life. There's all these guys calling her all the time. She's, on and off with the ex-boyfriend. Um, there's some exciting guy, whether or not it's the male entertainment guy, stripper or not, who knows? But it's somebody she's so excited about. She, on a whim, maybe the date was going to be a short date, if you know what I mean. Maybe who
Yeah.
knows what's going on there. I mean, adults can do what the adults need to do, right? And I'll tell you, I've seen enough stuff with people parked in cars all over the place, including next to my house, um, of all ages, um, and demographics and income levels, etc. That I don't think it's that unusual for sort of let's say a fling to happen. So let's say it was just going to be that. It was going to be a
I mean,
short.
she's 19. She's 19. I
Yeah,
think
19.
that's
Yeah, so it
kind
was. I
of,
mean, it's like it seems. And I mean, the people I've seen doing, if you know what I'm kind of hinting at.
of
I
course.
mean, I've seen people middle aged. I've seen senior citizens. No joke. I mean, out in the open. I mean, it's crazy what people will do anywhere. Hormones are hormones. Okay, so whatever. But I'm not saying that has to be what's going on. But it's pretty weird where she left all her stuff.
Senior citizens?
Yeah, yeah, oh my God, yeah. That's I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe that's another show, I
Yeah,
guess, because
it's
yeah, yeah, you just be blown away.
all right.
People get liquor in them, they do whatever. So okay, so then it's like, what my thought was okay. They went out in a blizzard. Blizzard isn't really like the safest driving conditions. Um, so there's some raised percentage chance that you can get an accident, get stuck in the snow, And here's the thing, we don't really know who this guy is. So let's say this guy's car turned up abandoned somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, okay, even though no one's ever put two and two together from that, he could have been from out of state. I mean, the state line's right there, right? Is that the state line over that river? I'm not sure. It might be.
I'll
Uh,
investigate. It seems like
Maybe not. Yeah, but he could have driven from out of state, especially if it was going to be like a sure thing. Um,
besides, really quickly, she did study in the University of Wisconsin in River Falls. So she previously may have made some connections or knew of someone from River Falls.
yeah, and it could be, and who knows if it was even his car, right? So
Yes.
like he could have borrowed a car, could have stolen a car. Um, yeah, who knows? Okay, so my little long-winded at this point story is okay. Either they drive into the river, and this river is a river that never gets shallow, so no one ever finds it until someone finally finds it, and their bodies are long gone or deteriorated. And that this happens. Like they go and they look in some lake and they're like, oh, here's somebody from 30 years ago. No one ever knew what happened to them. And that happens, no jokes, all the time. I mean, I've seen YouTube videos and other channels about things like that happening.
Yeah.
Or it's like a Maura Murray thing where, this car goes off the road, gets disabled. For some reason, they have to leave the car, and then they wander off into kind of the fields or the woods. And because the car isn't connected to anybody, and because maybe they wander off into some place where just no one has ever looked that carefully, as we've had kind of potentially mentioned for like Maura Murray, and who that other kid from some decades ago that disappeared on the way to the fair. We thought maybe something like this happened too, where
Oh yeah.
he wandered off. Remember that? I can't remember the kid's name
I
now.
can't. Yeah. Same.
Yeah, that one. But it was like the same kind of thing where it was like you look at those woods and you're like, and once again, a body has to be found to be found. So if no one ever goes to the place, if it's someplace remote, and I'm seeing a lot of like woods and fields and things on this map.
By the way, really quickly, that was Roger Day, episode number 83. Roger Day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was our thought there was just it was a lot of tangled woods and stuff between where he
Yeah.
where he left and where he was supposed to arrive. So my thought is, it could have just be completely accidental. So maybe, any day now, for some reason they have to go look in the river or find something, or he gets turned up somewhere, and they're like, oh, who are these two bodies in this car? Um, I don't know. So
Mm.
that's my thought how that could happen accidentally.
Good point. Good point. All right. So basically to sum up the theories, right? On my end, I will say, well, if we're gonna do the percentages, I will really want to give at least, let's say, I'm actually gonna go as much as 15% planned the disappearance, at least initially, like the calls and all of the calling at work, her dressing up for some sort of a really strange occasion, meaning that she hasn't done this before because the supervisors and the co-workers believed it was kind of strange for her to dress up, so it means that she didn't do this on a regular basis. I don't know. Maybe even as I'm saying this, I might even push up the planned disappearance up to maybe even 20%, but maybe not. I'll leave it at 15 actually. Now, the other two ways we can go with is an accident or a murder. Now, whichever way we want to play it, I just have to include the Chad, the unidentified man, who could have been Dale, who could have been someone else completely. It wasn't the ex-boyfriend, by the way. For everyone who's listening, it wasn't. I know that there are maybe a few people who are like holding on to this. Maybe it's the ex-boyfriend that kind of called off the date earlier on because of the bad weather. But actually, the ex-boyfriend, he was really cooperative with police, and he did actually tell the cops that all the information that he knew. Cops kind of discounted him immediately. I kind of got the sense that it was definitely not the ex-boyfriend. But for everyone who was kind of holding on to that ex-boyfriend theory, here you go, guys. I don't think it was the ex-boyfriend, but we never know for sure, I guess. So I'm just gonna say the 15% planned disappearance. Now, her more sinister events happening, or maybe an accident happening. I have to like allocate the last 85% to that, and I will say, since there is a man involved here, it's not like she left on foot. If she left on foot, I think we would be like in the dark completely here. But just the fact that she left with an unidentified man, and then apparently some strange things started happening in the Swedell household a week later, kind of indicates to me that I think it was, let's say, a murder, not an accident, because I would say the only person who could get into the Swedell household was, the three people who lived there. So that would mean that Susan would have had to stay alive for at least a few days after her initial disappearance, because I wouldn't think that on the first night immediately Susan would have disclosed the information regarding where is the key to the house located, like on what shelf, immediately. I think to disclose this information, there has to be some sort of longer relationship, longer term happening there. You know what I mean? Maybe 2 days into her potential runaway, she kind of tells the guy, "Yo, we could like sneak back into the house or whatever. I know exactly where the key is located." So that's why I'm not gonna be going with the accident theory this time, because the accident theory would kind of indicate that they took a drive into like snowy conditions and they crashed the car. Okay, it makes sense, but it doesn't make any sense how there's strange activity 1 week after their disappearance. So I'm not gonna say it's an accident, because I think an accident would have happened on the same night as they took that little joyride, I would say. So that leaves me with actually is kind of I keep going with a murder, but once again, are we gonna lean towards that Susan is driving away with this unidentified man? She thinks it's a quick little joyride, but now this man turns like sinister and makes her his captive. And now, 1 week after the fact, he's like still kinda torturing her, or maybe she's dead by then. But then the guy was like, "Oh, so she told me where the keys to her house is. So I'm just gonna barge in there, contaminate everything, leave DNA, whatever, whatever, and I'm just gonna, have some food there, smoke some marijuana, and drop her pantsuit under the, under the bed." Like, that's not a soul culprit. I think this is a situation where the culprit and Susan are still good, on good terms. So they go in there, they kind of have fun. They're like, "Okay, your little sister is gonna come back home anytime now. Let's dodge." So they dodge, and maybe then down the line she gets murdered. See, this is why it's such a big mystery, and I'm actually gonna even avoid allocating any percentages, to be honest, because now when I'm thinking about it, I can't even do it. I'm just gonna say that one thing I do believe is that I think Susan didn't die immediately after her disappearance. That's the only thing I'm gonna say. I really have no idea what happened in this case. I hope the audience members have some ideas. But yeah, dude, I'm handing it over to you, man. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just the the house visit, what would seem odd to me is, we don't. I mean, I guess she could have bought some other clothes. I don't get why go to the effort of going into the house and like not bringing your clothes with you. Because if you left some evidence that you were there, then you've already blown the whole mysterious disappearance. You know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yes.
she left without a
Hmm.
clue.
Yeah.
I mean, why not just bring your friggin' pants at that point, or your shirts and stuff? Like, what are you waiting for? So, yeah, that I guess with that being said, I know I've already given probably lengthy answers to how I feel about the rest of it. I'm just gonna give a quick breakdown of. I'm gonna say 5% planned disappearance. I'm gonna say 55% homicide. And I think pretty quickly after whatever happened. I don't know. I can't imagine the person waited very long, but who knows? Okay, I won't go long on that. And then let's say 35% accident because of the snow, the ice, the big, huge bodies of water nearby, um, and the time of year. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just one last thing, really quickly. Is there a chance that the Swedell family fabricated the house visit situation? Because like nothing really substantial came of that. Dishes. It could have been more dishes. You could have just forgot how many dishes were there. Smoke of marijuana. That's something that they said. No one really. I don't think police ever went in and smelled any marijuana. And then the pantsuit. I mean, it missing makes no sense. Like, how is it
Yeah.
missing?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I see what you're saying. Like, well, this is what my thought was in that scenario. Maybe because they felt like the cops weren't trying hard enough. So they're like, well,
Yeah,
let's put a little smoke in this thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's true. That's a good point. Because yeah, the pantsuit that I think that's one of the things you really got out of this case. I mean, you had a couple things in this thing that I had never thought of, but specifically the pantsuit thing. Yeah, it doesn't. It makes no sense that she would have that with her and not her. I mean, wouldn't the pantsuit be in the purse at least? Like, you know what I mean? Where the pantsuit is, the purse is. I mean, let's suppose you put it in like a gym bag or something, like people do when people bring a change of clothes.
Yeah.
Well, why would you bring the gym bag with you and not your glasses and not your wallet and your purse and your makeup and um, everything else you'd need to be away from your home from work.
Smells fishy. The whole case just smells fishy, man.
Yeah, it doesn't. And then it's like, to me, it sounds more plausible that the pantsuit was in the car like the rest of the stuff. And at some point, someone brought in the pantsuit. And then,
Mm,
yeah, it's really
okay.
strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, hopefully we don't get an angry comment from her sister because her sister's pretty active in the case. But who knows? Maybe if we do get that comment, maybe she'll come on our show sometime and
Oh
give
yeah.
us give us her side of
She's
things.
everyone's invited from this case. Literally everyone. So yeah, guys. Thanks so much for joining us this week. This was a really interesting episode. Really interested, and I'm happy that this time we didn't crash. Everything seems to be back in working order. I really hope everyone will enjoy the rest of their week. And yeah, as always, we will catch you next time. We promise. And until then, just please stay safe and peace out.